agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Michael Baranowski, a professor of political science at Northern Kentucky University. I'm joined today by my conservative counterpart, Cleveland area attorney and defender of freedom, Jay Carson.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Jay. So we have a bunch of things that we want to get into in this midweek show. And one thing, it's sort of a revisiting a topic we've talked about before, but I think in a slightly different context. We'll see. This week, House Republicans voted to remove Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar from her position on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And the vote was along, I say House Republicans because the vote was along party lines. Every Democrat was in opposition, and no Republicans opposed the resolution, which stated that Omar, by her own words, has disqualified herself from serving on the committee, that her comments have brought dishonor to the House of Representatives. And the resolution for having her removed mentioned a number of specific comments from Omar, and some I'll highlight here. Her remark in February of 2019 that support for Israel in Congress was all about the Benjamins, baby. That's probably the most famous one. Later that month, Omar saying, I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it's okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country. Her comment in May of 2021 that Israel is an apartheid state and those who disagree need to get on the right side of history. And her remark in June of 2021 that we must have the same level of accountability and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity. We have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. Now, the author of the resolution, Representative Max Miller of Ohio, he's one of actually two Jewish Republicans in the House, said that Omar cannot be an objective decision maker on the Foreign Affairs Committee given her biases against Israel and against the Jewish people. And in a speech on the House floor, one of Omar's fellow squad members, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, said, there's nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. And Representative Cori Bush, another squad member, added, Republicans are waging a blatantly Islamophobic and racist attack against Congresswoman Omar. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The white supremacy happening is unbelievable. This is despicable. And in their own comments before the vote, Omar said, is anyone surprised that I am being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy? Or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced? Frankly, it is expected because when you push power, power pushes back. Now, Jay, as I said, you and I talked about this previously, but before there wasn't an actual resolution that we had that we could look at that cited specific reasons. And now we have that. We have something concrete to go on. And so I guess my initial question is the most obvious one is, would you have voted for this resolution?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, and I should also add you didn't put in the Israel has hypnotized the world statement,
right? And that was not part of the resolution as I didn't see it in the resolution. Okay. So that's
but it is something that
I was only going based on.
I get it. You're going by the letter, yeah,
exactly. So and
I do want to say in her defense, of course, when about some of these what are anti-Semitic tropes. Ilhan Omar had told CNN, I wasn't aware of the fact that there are any tropes about Jews and money, and that she called it, it's very enlightening. So, no, absolutely, I think it's appropriate. And here's the thing. Almost all of her Democratic colleagues voted to condemn these same remarks and said,
that's not true.
Unacceptable.
Nope, that's not true.
No?
Nope, that's not true.
Who didn't?
There was a bipartisan. In fact, there have been a couple of bipartisan resolutions about that, but they were not directed to Representative Omar, and they were not focused. They were not focused on any specific remarks. They were just general condemnations of anti-Semitism. I looked at those. I read those resolutions in the last couple of days. So no, it's not the case that those remarks of Omar's were condemned by the vast majority of House Republicans. or House Democrats?
Let me pull up. We may have to agree to disagree because I will pull up the resolution number that I'm thinking about.
Okay, well, that's you know what we'll do actually is we'll just in real time take a pause, and we will come back. It will not seem like a pause to anyone who's listening, but it actually will be a pause so we can check and actually come to some sort of agreement or not about this.
So I was incorrect in that the resolution does not target Ilhan Omar by name. I would point, however, to what happened. The timing of the resolution came immediately after she made these statements, and also in the wake of other Republican resolutions that did call her out by name. And what ended up was a sort of a general resolution condemning anti-Semitism. But I can also point to the statements of numerous other Congress people, other Democratic leaders. I think someone on our Facebook thing had made a big deal about this before, and I linked to Senator Schumer's statements at the time about this is unacceptable, this won't stand, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, I think, look, if whether it calls her out by name or not, if this type of these types of statements are unacceptable, then they're unacceptable.
Well, I don't think, but that's I don't think that those statements in and of themselves, I don't think were unacceptable. I mean, especially now the Benjamin's comment was, I think, ill-advised, and she had just gotten into Congress and she said something dumb. And she apologized for that statement. She said, anti-Semitism is real, and I'm grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes. But at the same time, I reaffirmed the problematic role of lobbyists in our politics, whether it be AIPAC, the NRA, or the fossil fuel industry. It's gone on too long, and we must be willing to address it. And I agree entirely with that. Also, she mentioned about the atrocities tweet. She said in a press release clarifying it, the conversation was about accountability for specific incidents regarding those as ICC, International Criminal Court cases, not a moral comparison between Hamas and the Taliban and the U.S. and Israel. And, not only that, but Matt Gaetz, of all people, sort of semi-defended Omar. He said, hey, Republicans are doing this because we don't like what she has to say. And I think now Gaetz ended up voting with his party on this, but I think that's basically what we're talking. I mean, none of the 26 Jewish Democrats in the House seem to think that Omar should be removed for anti-Israel bias. And the fact of the matter, this is viewpoint discrimination. This is the sort of cancel culture that Republicans say that they are against. But in this instances, when it comes to an opportunity to enact some retribution against, especially against a Black Muslim woman immigrant, oh, bring it on. So
yeah, I'm going to just quote someone. When someone says being Jewish and supporting Israel means you're not loyal to America, we must call it out. When someone says looks at a neo-Nazi rally and sees some very fine people among its company, we must call it out. When someone suggests that money drives support for Israel, we must call it out. That was, of course, Senator Chuck Schumer back when these statements were made. I can probably pull some from the House side as well. I think the difference is when the statements were made and the anti-Semitism resolution was passed, there was no danger that Ilhan Omar might lose part of her power and be removed from the committee. Now she is being removed from the committee. And that's the difference in the votes, I would suggest.
Yeah, see, I think I think she's right in large part that it's the case of she's an easy target. The Republican base.
Well, she's an easy target because she said this stuff.
No, she's an easy target because she is saying things in a way that makes a lot of Republicans uncomfortable, and they'd rather not have to deal with strongly divergent worldviews and viewpoints. They don't really care about viewpoint diversity. They want to squelch those sort of views. And if that view, it's the added bonus of being able to put a Black woman, Muslim immigrant in her place, well, that's okay for a lot of folks on the right as well.
Wow. So I'd say
I mean, let's keep in mind, Jay.
If you think that someone who thinks that the Israeli government is the moral equivalent of the Taliban, perhaps they're not qualified.
And
to be on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
She clarified that statement. You know, and again, if we're going to look at what one individual tweet taken out of context means, or if we're going to take,
it's not one individual tweet. It's a number of statements over a period
absolutely,
of time.
and those number of statements make it clear, I think, to my view, that Representative Omar believes that policy toward Israel is influenced very much by the strength of AIPAC. Is very much influenced by the amount of political, economic, and cultural power that Israel has in the United States, that Jewish people have in the United States. And I think, while I may not agree with her on those things, and on many of those things I don't, I think the idea that she should be removed from a committee because she holds those views, I think that is blatantly un-American.
So do you think... I mean, I guess you're taking it at her word that she didn't know the things she was saying were anti-Semitic tropes. I find that to be fundamentally unbelievable.
Well, I think early on, I would say whether that's believable or not, it's one thing to engage in a one or two hyperbolic tropes that you've like on Twitter or something. It's like, well, that's a dog whistle. That's what have you. Okay.
I was just going to say dog whistle, but go ahead.
Well, that happens a couple of times and you're like, well, hey, that's not cool. That's not okay. Right. And I agree, but you don't see the kind of pattern over time about clearly anti-Semitic things, because it seems to me that it gets to a point where can't you raise the point, or for argument's sake, at least saying that, well, I think that our policy in Israel gives Israel too much of a pass about real serious problems in how they deal with occupied territories. Why can't?
I think you can, absolutely.
Maybe you can't if you're a black Muslim woman.
Well, or maybe you can if you go around saying things like Israel's hypnotized America or hypnotized the world.
Well, you know,
I mean, those things which are dog whistles, right? And you wouldn't hesitate to call out someone who was, and this is what Schumer, to his credit, did, right? He said that, Trump's, some of these were very fine people is essentially a dog whistle to give sort of some credence to the alt-right, and that we call it out. What's the difference? And I would say there are plenty of Democrats who have been plenty critical of Israel, but not in these express and vulgar terms.
So watch what you say. That's right. I mean, it's there are 49. The Foreign Affairs Committee has 49 members, and the idea that somehow this is just unacceptable, that this one very harsh critic of Israel can't be on this committee because why? This is retribution, plain and simple, and I find it again.
Oh, it's retribution, sure, but this is politics. I guess that's the.
Well, sure, it's politics.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's you seem to be sort of stuck on this retribution or viewpoint discrimination.
Well, it is.
And I say, well, no, and I'm saying yes, I agree with you.
Okay. Well, all right then.
Absolutely, it's viewpoint discrimination, but I think it's legitimate viewpoint discrimination when you're deciding on who's going to be on your committee. It's like your committee.
Okay.
Well, no, the House, right? It's the House members committee, the majority of the House.
No, you're right. No, I'm not questioning the legality of this. It's certainly well within the rights of the House to vote that anyone be removed from any committee, because this isn't to me a question of law.
Look, they removed Marjorie Taylor Greene from all committees.
This is a question of values.
Nutty stuff.
Well, she threatened, there were threats of physical violence, basically, which is more than just nutty stuff. But this to me is a question of values. And I think it says a lot about the values of the people who voted both for it and against it. And to me, voting against it is saying that, well, I value retribution more than I value viewpoint diversity. And okay, you can't argue values. Your values are what they are. I just think in this case, the values of the Democrats are to my mind, better values than the values of the Republicans on this one issue.
Well, I guess so. These are Democrats who value viewpoint diversity. So
on this one issue, yeah.
On this one issue, I guess that's sort of the thing.
But just like how Republicans tend to, like I said, rail against cancel culture, and yet this is clearly somebody who is being canceled. But in this instance, it's okay. Well, why? Because retribution is more important.
No, it is okay because here's the thing. No. She's not losing her job. She's still a member of Congress. She still gets paid the same salary she would anywhere else. And quite frankly, this probably gave her a good bit of career job security. She's still free to say whatever she wants about Israel on the floor of the House in conducting on any votes or even just in the general remarks. She's free to go around her district, go around the country, saying whatever she wants about Israel, and there's no threat to her livelihood. And except for also again, when you talk about canceling politicians, well, that's also a little something different because you elect them to express a certain viewpoint, and if you don't like that viewpoint, you get rid of them. It's not as if you're this is someone who works in accounting, and then you decide you don't like their politics and you get rid of them.
Sure, there's being canceled and there's being canceled. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up.
She's welcome to go on MSNBC, and I anticipate she has and will, and rail against Israel to her heart's delight. But that doesn't mean that she's got some sort of property right.
Oh, no, of course not. No,
right to be on the committee.
No, of course not. No, and and looking at it from a political standpoint, there was a conversation that was overheard right from Ken Buck, I believe it was, a Republican representative who was saying to one of his fellow Republicans that this is the stupidest vote we've ever taken, or something along those lines, for exactly kind of some of the reasons you suggested, in that it actually raises Representative Omar's profile and maybe makes her. And so this is kind of a dumb move in that it just gives her more of a platform for the sort of things that we don't agree with. And I think, Ken Buck, he was reluctant to kind of go along with the vote. He ended up, I think, probably being, pressured to giving some assurances for other things to go along with it because they wanted it to be a party line vote. But I think you can make that case from a political standpoint, is that it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense from a strategy, politics kind of standpoint, longer term. Well, yeah, and keep in mind, you got to look at people's districts and sure,
where they represent. I mean, so there were going to be, the politics will play different in different places.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely, certainly. But, and this is in the context, again, of a Republican House caucus that has, I think there are 4 out of 222 House Republicans. I believe there are 4 Black Republicans, and that's, it's a pretty small percentage. And so that, I think that reflects, obviously, the electorate that's voting these folks into office. And so it's going to be, like I said, a lot easier sort of thing to do. Whereas on the Democratic side, I believe something like around 25% or so of the Democratic caucus is Black. And that obviously changes things,
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
Republicans.
It's also going to be a tougher, and I think this will come out in races in the future. It might be a tough vote to defend for people like representatives from New York areas, from Miami, from heavily Jewish districts.
Well, yeah, well,
there may be a why didn't you vote? And I suppose you can say, look, well, we want diversity of viewpoints and all that, but I think
I don't think it'd be that hard because, like I said, there are 26 Jewish Democrats in the House, and all of them voted against this measure. So I don't really think that's
right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And what I'm saying is I can see an attack ad in the making for those 26 members.
Yeah, I'm sure they bake that into their considerations as well. So yeah, it's not nothing in some of those districts, but I also think that the argument.
No, and I'm not saying oh my gosh, she's doomed, but no,
Especially given that most of these are very safe districts, and that, as I think you would argue, the idea that saying that, well, because you are Jewish, your only issue is Israel, or your overriding issue is Israel, is itself an anti-Semitic trope, right?
But it could well be an important issue for members of your district.
Sure, it could be, right. But just saying that, well, if you're Jewish, then you vote on Israel, that, like I said, in and of itself could be called an anti-Semitic trope.
Right.
So, because we're not, just because you're Jewish, everything is not revolving around your that identity as a Jewish person. You might actually care about some
of my best friends vote in favor of Israel, Mike.
There you go.
But
and some of them against. Yeah, well, absolutely. So
yeah, no, but hang on, but go ahead.
All right. Okay. Well, why don't we move on to our second story here? And that is, the 2024 presidential election. We still have 20.
Can we do one more thing? I'm
sure.
sorry. I just
absolutely.
found it.
No,
I just
please
found
do.
what I was looking for.
Oh, yeah, please do. Yeah. This is the bonus show. We can add in.
So, yeah, we can do whatever we want. Yep. Equating the United States, I just popped up. Equating the United States and Israel to Hamas and the Taliban is as offensive as it is misguided. Ignoring the differences between democracies governed by the rule of law and contemptible organizations that engage in terrorism at best discredits one's intended argument and at worst reflects deep-seated prejudice.
That would be, I agree with that, but again,
that would be the statement that was signed by 20 dozen Jewish Democratic lawmakers.
Sure.
In 2021,
but it's a straw man.
Jake Ossenfloss, Ted.
It's I don't care who the members are. You can read off the names. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if you want to take Omar's remarks out of context, without that tweet out of context, without the clarification she added, so if you want to assume bad faith on her end, well then fine. I can't talk you out of that. But she said flatly in that press release that this was about specific incidents about ICC cases, and I quote, not a moral comparison between Hamas and the Taliban and the U.S. and Israel. I don't know if she could have been more clear about that. That's, yeah, anyway. I clearly, on this, I think I am a lot more inclined to agree with Representative Omar that a lot of this has to do actually with bias, but anti-Muslim, issues with who she is as an individual, in part because of her race and religion and gender. And you're, I think, a lot less inclined to believe that that's the case here.
That's correct.
Okay. We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.